Shabbat Shalom. Are the Torahs safe? There are not words to articulate how grateful I am to be a member of the Jewish family. And that we have been around long enough to be able to articulate with laser focus what is our most precious object. When disaster of unprecedented scale strikes a place that is dear, and there is a Jewish community, tiny or large, and large is always relative when we're talking about Jewish communities. The first question after, of course, are the people safe, is, are the Torahs safe? Because when embers fly and emotions are shattered in every direction, the focus and intention of the Jewish people on this sacred object, and we are so fortunate to have multiple Sifrei Torah at Ner Tamid, gives us a place to gather all of that fear and all of that anxiety and ask, at least, are the Torahs safe? That's born out of millennia of destruction and rebuilding, of wandering and uprooting, attempting to establish ourselves in new places, only to discover that we are upended yet again. Whether by an out-of-control climate, which really isn't actually as awful emotionally as when it is human beings deliberately doing that to one another. It's all awful, but there are degrees. The vision of my friend Cantor Ruth Berman Harris with her husband carrying the Torahs out of Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, really just a few hours ago. She is an Eshet Chayil, Cantor Ruth. And that's a community that I know well. To hear that she and her husband carried out the Torahs through blinding and choking smoke is just so moving. Because when a place, all of it, is precious and as old and established and important in the community as Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, and you know you can't save the building and you really can't salvage much of anything else, of course they would carry the Torahs out. For those of you who might not know my own synagogue connections in Los Angeles, there are now they go back 30 years. But 2 synagogues ago, I cantored for a small synagogue in Arcadia, which is just beyond Pasadena. Sweet synagogue, people would usually say, there are Jews in Arcadia? And there were a few, and it was a growing congregation, but they didn't have luck finding the right rabbi for them. I was very part-time cantor. And after a few misses with rabbinic leadership, they finally merged. And they merged with Pasadena. Most of the congregants of that era have passed. It's now quite a number of years ago, but there are some of, quote, my congregants that are part of that community. Very involved and shattered. But the priority that when the walls are coming down, we Jewish people know where we go, know the tree of life that sustains us. That gives me hope. As a matter of fact, one of the Torahs rescued from Pasadena was the Nedar Torah. In 1934, Samuel Nedar, who was a leading importer in the Iranian port city of Khorramshahr, commissioned the Torah to mark the death of his first wife. She was the daughter of a famous rabbi in Iran. Nedar remarried and moved to Tehran before emigrating to the US in 1967. Meanwhile, in the early 1980s, fierce battles during the Iran-Iraq War destroyed Khorramshahr, and the synagogue housing the Torah was ruined. Iran captured Khorramshahr in 1982, and someone whose identity is unknown to this day took the Torah to Tehran for safekeeping. By 1982, Samuel Nedar was living in Pasadena. His son, Raymond, sent a 10-page letter directly to Ayatollah Khomeini, leader of the Iranian Islamic Revolution, to request from one holy person to another the Torah that had been part of the family for so many years. Raymond said in 2018, he knew they'd go and destroy the synagogues. My father argued that since Khomeini was ordained, he must have learned Hebrew and knew that the Torah was a holy book, so his Revolutionary Guards might have kept it. 6 months later, the FBI notified Nedar that a crate had arrived at the port of San Pedro from the Islamic Republic of Iran, addressed to him. Who mailed the crate remains also a mystery. When the crate made its way to his home, Nedar opened it and found the Torah wrapped inside. According to the foreword, there was a letter from the Ayatollah confirming that, yes, he did study Hebrew as part of his religious training. Afraid that such a letter might appear suspicious to authorities, Nedar then crumbled it up and threw it out. But the Nedar family donated the Torah to the Pasadena Temple, where it stands out among the more typical velvet-covered scrolls. As a Persian Torah, it's encased in a tall, hinged silver cylinder, a teak it's called, which is engraved with flowers and leaves and crowned with a silver turban. Samuel Nedar died in 1993, and his sons Ray and Nate moved out of the Pasadena area. Until the pandemic, they used to come every Yom Kippur to hold the Torah, which the congregation still reads from every Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then came January 7th. Ruth and her husband grabbed the Persian Torah just before the fire consumed the building. I've heard stories the last couple of hours, days that feel like years, of people in just a couple of minutes paring down to the most essential items in their home. We know things are just things, but they're not just things. They're our story, they're our memories, they're our connection, they're our gifts from our ancestors, from our loved ones, our mementos. Our soul, in so many ways, is in our things. And yet, of course, that's not our whole story. But hearing about people taking heirloom Shabbat candlesticks, ancient prayer books passed down from generation to generation, a talit from a child's bar mitzvah. And I want to wish mazel tov to the children and families who are celebrating their b'nai mitzvah today, not where they thought they would be, but in sister and brother congregations that are welcoming them in for their simchas. And I'd just like to ask you to take a moment. It's a very important values exercise to ask yourself, aside from your most important papers and your medicines and your pets, what thing or three things would you take if you had to flee? If and when at all possible, what we take from our sacred home is our Torah. Many years ago, a beautiful bat mitzvah student, she actually wasn't my student, it was a large synagogue, and we each had a roster of students that the tutors worked with. Her name was Joelle. Joelle, in defiance of the fashion trends at the late 90s, wore a beautiful dress to her bat mitzvah. So refreshing. Beautiful, modest dress. And the sanctuary was packed at Adat Ariel in Valley Village. And Joelle told the story of her grandparents who had escaped Europe just with the fires of the Shoah on their heels. And it's a long time ago, and a couple of the details are a little unclear, and I only heard the story once at that gorgeous bat mitzvah, but somehow her grandparents were able to carry out a Torah scroll from Europe, not on its spindles. It was an untethered scroll. And she told the story of her grandparents sharing the Torah somehow. It might have been two scrolls, forgive me, but wrapping it around their persons, around their bodies, tucked into their clothes, and walking out of Europe. And I will never forget what Joelle said. She said, "The story has always been told in our family that it wasn't that my grandparents carried the Torah out of Europe, but that the Torah carried my grandparents out of Europe." The Torah carries us, my friends, and we are so blessed and fortunate to be held in its embrace. I'll close today with words from my teacher, a fellow San Franciscan and dean of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, with whom I took classes while getting my master's degree there, Rabbi Dr. Bradley Shavit Artson, who has written this poem called Prayers During a Fire. Flames scorch our beloved hills, devour our homes, incinerating memories acquired over lifetimes, destroyed in an instant. Smoke smothers, a death-like blanket blocking the clear California skies, swathing our community in a dark, dank blanket of soot. Normally in motion, the smoke looks solid and hides the light, but not the hope. Our lives are more than our homes. Our memories rest in our hearts, not our albums. Our loves are stronger than these flames, unquenchable, life-giving still. The soul of people are God's true flames, and the light breaks through even the thickest smoke. The sun will shine again, and so will we. Shabbat shalom. Please stay safe.